Alright guys, so made a post on Facebook the other day complaining about this template and also complaining about the instructions given on how to lay this thing out on the hood. The only dimension you're given is 8 inches from the front edge of the template to the front edge of the hood. The rest of the instructions are essentially lay a tape measure here to the edge of the hood, here to the edge of the hood, maybe use the back of the hood, maybe in the front of the hood, I don't know. You're not given any particular location to measure to. These surfaces are curved. They're not parallel to anything on the template at all. You have no good point to measure from here to here, from there to there, from there to the back, wherever. None of this is a very accurate way to do it. You could do it. A bunch of trial and error would probably get you there. But the result from this layout method is half the people that put these things on or more have told me it's a giant pain in the ass. And I see these things on hoods with a fair amount of regularity that are ½ inch out, sometimes as bad as a ½ inch. Typically it's 1/4 inch or something like that. But they're not square. They're not square to each other. They just don't match up with how they should be on the hood because they don't match up with each other because there's no good measurement method. So what I'm going to do is, number one, show you guys an accurate method to create a good layout to put this thing on. And then I'm going to show you changes that could be made to this template so that you can actually create hard measurement layout on the hood from solid points of measurement, create a template on the hood that then matches the template given here so that you can just put this thing in place, square it up, have hard lines to put it to, tape it down, double check it real quick, again against your hard measurement points, and the whole thing be square. Pull it off, peel it off, put it back, and everything go on really well, and your vents be nice and square to each other and square to the hood. Okay, so here's how I pulled the layout on the hood template itself. Interestingly enough, I screwed this line up because I suck at math, but that's okay. When you double check your work, you'll catch everything. I double checked mine, I caught it. That's why this method is good, because you can double check it. All right, so the first thing I did was lined up my ruler with the edge of the vinyl and struck myself a line here and here. The reason I did that was because I could see these lines better than I can the edge of this vinyl against the backer paper. I'm 45 years old, my eyesight ain't great anymore. If you're 22, you won't need to do that. Did the same thing up here. So, set your ruler up against the 2 lines that you marked and get it dead even with the edge of the vinyl. Come over here, match up the line you made over here. The width of the vinyl is 85 centimeters or 850 millimeters. Half of 850 millimeters is 425 millimeters. So, we're going to come over here and I'll make that correction now. 420, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right there in the middle. Fix my inaccurate line from before. There's my mark. Come up here, same thing. Measure the width. Now, up here, we're at 85 centimeters plus a millimeter, so that's 851 millimeters. Interesting enough, half 851 is 425 and a half. So we'll double check, make sure we're laid out good. On there correctly, 425 and a half. So, that's good enough. So, now I've got my lines. Lay that there. Everything's nice and square and good and solid. Now I have a correct line. And then we'll just do a little squiggly bit through this to say, hey dumbass, don't use the line you screwed up. Alright. Now we have layout on this. So, we've got a point of measurement here. That's square. We've got the bottom edge of the vinyl here. That looks pretty square. You've got a hard line measurement here and a hard line measurement here that you can check against a couple other things that I'll show you how to lay out on the hood. Okay, so how do we find the center of the hood? This is a spare hood. I'm not worried about the paint. Don't bitch about my tape measure. All right, so in order to find the layout on this thing, you need to find hard points you can measure from. Fortunately, Mazda gave us two very good, very hard points we can measure from, so you can find a point from here to here and here to here that are equal measurement and give us a point to lay out from. So, stupid simple way to do this, slap a piece of tape right here. Grab your pen and your tape measure. The length of this measurement does not matter. Just keep the tape centered on the point and always measure from the same side of the tape. So if I'm hooked here and measuring to here, I want to have my pen mark on my side of the tape measure over here. Lay that right on, what's this, 29 inches? Perfect. Pull a line. Good deal. We got a mark. Same thing over here, 29 inches. Right there, 29 inches from that line. Double check, we're good. Right here, where the 29-inch measurement crossed the 29-inch measurement from over here, is the center line of the hood. We now have a mark. So we're just going to take that mark and make it nice and visible. Okay. Same thing down here. Tape measure. Actually, we'll slap a piece of tape on it first. Somewhere near the middle of the hood. Done. Pull a line. Same thing. Center of the tape on the line. 53 inches. So we're going to lay that out. 53 inches. And just drag it across the tape. Then double check it. Good. We're on 53 inches all the way across. Get this out of the way. 53 inches. Hit that line at 53 inches. Boom. We now have a center measurement on this hood. Mark, mark. Now, you can do this with the yardstick. You can use it. You can even lay out a piece of tape and use a piece of string to get a line between here and mark it. I'm going to use my yardstick because I have it. There we go. We're laid out. Got tape on the hood. Now, we really only need our mark from here to here, because the template doesn't go up to that back edge of the hood. The only reason I made my mark that far back is because the further apart you make the marks, the more accurate they're going to be. And this is the part where I could have used the second set of hands. Actually, yeah, well, that wasn't going to work out. So, we're going to tape this down right here on our mark. See if that doesn't work out. I think that'll work out just fine. Perfect. On the mark, on the mark. Didn't need a second set of hands for the ruler. Okay, we now have a center line mark on the hood. Okay, now we need our 8-inch line from here to here. That's easy enough to do. We need to use a tape measure, so we'll see how this yardstick works out. Bump the edge of the hood, push it down. Got an 8-inch mark. Okay. Okay, now we have a place to lay out a square mark from here across here. Grab my cute little, I don't know, what is that, 8 by 12 framing square. I don't know where the fuck I got this thing. Measure out the mark, get dead square with our line. Nail the mark, nail the mark. Flip it over. Same thing. Dead on the line. Dead on the line. Dead on our lower line. Alright, now for shiggles, double check the straightness of this line. And that's good. So these two lines that meet in the middle, that ended up being one dead nice even straight line across the bottom of the hood, are exactly what I was after. Now we have a layout of where to put the template on the hood. Good deal. Okay, now we got a layout on the hood. Are we 100% certain it's accurate? Not yet. Here's how you check your work. So the reason we have this line this wide, because realistically, if we got a center line over there on our template and a center line here on the hood, we can just put that center line from here to here, meet this mark right here, and we should be dead on. But we want to double check that. So take your ruler. Nice arbitrary measurement. It does not matter what it is, so long as it's the same on both sides. So I'm laying out here on the 6-inch mark. Come off there, you bitch. On the 6-inch mark in the middle, I'm going to make a mark over here at 12 and a mark over here at 0. These two lines should check identically from that corner to this mark and from that corner to this mark, or very, very close. So let's check them. Center of the tape, just under, just a skosh under 46 1/4. Just a skosh under 46 1/4. Okay, now that tells us that these two marks, which were taken off of our layout line, are dead nuts 46 1/4 or just a little bit less from there to there and from there to there. That tells us that our layout should be accurate as hell. Now, there's a caveat to that. This hood might be screwed up. I did hit a deer with it at 25 miles an hour about 1.5 years ago, and I had it straightened out by my buddy who does PDR work. We think the hood's straight. I'm going to bet on Mazda more than I'm going to bet on the damage done by the deer. So if you want to check it a little bit more, you can. You can measure from this mark over to that corner, and from this mark over to this corner, or vice versa. Double check anything against those two hard points from the factory, and you will know if you make the same measurement from there to there and there to there and here to wherever, as long as you're coming off those hard points to the same point on any one of these lines, you get a duplicate measurement from there to here and there to here, you have a good layout. This method right here is the best way to check it, in my opinion, because you are working off of lines that you created off of other lines. We know our measurement from here to there and from here to there is good because that's how we came up with our center line to begin with. So if you take this, your errors will be compounded if something is wrong by making these marks here, and it'll be very obvious. But if your errors are not very obvious on these two marks taken from the corners of the hood, you've got a good layout. You know where your template goes. You're doing good. Okay, guys. The point of the whole thing was what changes would I make to this template and to the layout instructions so that this thing would go on faster, more accurately, more easily, and correctly. So here's where I'd start. Number one, in order to get a center line on the template, I had to measure it out and mark it out. And if you take a look, you can see the first time I measured that out, I screwed it up. But that was okay because I double checked my work and there was a problem. So remeasured, remarked, now I've got a good center line on it that I can use. The way to fix that would be add a small notch here at the center line and a small notch here at the center line in the vinyl itself. It doesn't change anything on the layout or on the vinyl cut or anything else. It just changes. It just gives you a mark here that you can use to find center. So the CAD software that was used to create this thing would find center very easily. Put that little notch there and that little notch there, probably a V-shaped notch, and then you could just take your stick, slap it across those two notches, strike your line, and you'd have center. Second thing, I would add similar notches here and here. Doesn't matter where, so long as they're symmetrical, which could be done very easily in the CAD. And I would do it again here and here. That gives you solid locations that you can measure off the corner of the hood or off a mark on your center line to make sure that you're the same distance from here to there and here to there, or from here to there, or from here out to there, wherever. However, you can double check your work and double check the location of your template before you stick it on the hood to make sure it's exactly where it should be. So instead of doing your tape measure to the edge and hoping you get it right, there's nothing to guess. There's no, did I measure to the right spot on the edge of the hood? Did I not? It's you have solid points where you can lay this thing out and know that you are exactly where you need to be. The other thing I would do is these holes in the vinyl. They're slightly larger than the holes in the vent itself. So when I lay this out, once I get it over the marks, I lose sight of the vinyl entirely in this hole. And when I have it correct, I come over here and push this down, and I realize the holes in the vinyl and the holes in the vent are not in the exact same location. They're not the correct distance apart. Now, that's just a factor that comes into play when using a vinyl cutter. Because the numbers you put into it, there's a lot of math that goes on inside the magical box that controls the thing. And sometimes what comes out the other side isn't what you put in. It's never that big of a deal. It's never really that far off. And in this case, it's really not that big of a deal here. But what you need to do in order to make this so you can actually lay it out correctly is reduce the size of these holes by half. That way you can see right through the hole and still see the vinyl, and you can lay out center by eye. And then when you lay out the other side, the second hole, to position everything, you can still see the edges all the way around it, so you could actually decide precisely where you wanted to put that vent in relation to the template. So when you lay out the other side, you can duplicate it. Because the template's fine, the template lays out where the holes are at, but since these aren't where they really need to be, and you really can't see them anyway, you need a way to know how you laid this out so that you can do it again over here, so you can get the vents onto the template the same way on both sides. If you made those changes, these things would go on much more easily, much more accurately, and just the number of headaches would be reduced by a lot. Now, there's still going to be some guys who have race cars and drift cars who don't give a damn. They're going to just throw them on there because they need the hood to vent. They don't really care how they look. But street car guys who want their stuff to look right and be accurate and symmetrical, they're going to take the time, the 10 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever it took me to lay out this center line. You give them your own center line right here on the piece of vinyl, and then the ability to check from the vinyl to the corners of the hood and the layout to make sure you're accurately laid out on the hood when you put the template on, and everything is going to go much, much better and easier. No guesswork involved. All right, guys. So let me see what I did here. I cut a notch in here. I cut a notch in here, so I could actually see my layout lines through the transfer paper. And you can see, kind of hard to see right here, even for me right here. We're dead on the line, dead on the line, dead on the line. Pulled perfectly, everything's in place. I started in the center, got my layout lines lined up, stuck down the center, and then just laid this out and pushed it out. Everything is right where it's supposed to be. No error. I'm going to pull a tape measure across the hood from here down to this little corner right here, which gives me a solid measurement. 46 and just over 3/16. 46 and just over 3/16. So this is a test line. This line matches, everything laid out nice. Be even easier if we had a mark here and a mark here, which I could have put on, but I decided to try to do it this way, just to show that it could be done this way. But improvements to the template, such as these V-notches and showing a layout with the center line, makes it easy as hell. And I suck at this stuff. Okay, something else that you can do to improve your chances of getting everything nailed down correctly, before you finish everything up. This is the rivet that comes with the kit. It's a decent, standard, off-the-shelf, normal aluminum rivet. Nothing good, nothing bad, just a rivet. It does fit the hole pretty well, and by fit the hole, it's got a little slop. You actually want that. When you pull a pop rivet, you don't want it to fit the hole exactly. You want it to have just a little bit of room so that everything has a chance to grow and expand when you pull that rivet down and fill the holes and squeeze everything in tight. What I am going to do, instead of using these factory rivets, and those rivets are still good, I'm not saying anything bad about those, this is just a method that I'm going to use because it's going to give me a little bit of room to catch my errors before they cause me problems or before they're permanently there and I can't do anything about them. So this is an aircraft rivet. I don't remember where I got them. I think an aircraft mechanic buddy of mine might have given them to me. They're some special super duper rivet alloy, 75, 60, 61, I don't know. They're something like that. They are sized to match these washers. And again, you can see there's slop in there. Situation is, what you'll want to do is you start your first hole by drilling the size for this rivet. So you get a drill bit that's about the same size as this. When you drill your hole in the hood, that hole's going to wallow out a little bit on its own. Going through sheet metal, the hole ends up bigger than the bit every single time. That's great. That's what you want. You want a little bit of room. When you go to install rivets in the holes, you take your rivet, put it through, put a washer on it, and then give it one good squeeze. Now your washer's captive, it's not going anywhere. You're going to have your hood and your vent pinned together, but it's going to be loose and give you room to adjust. So you put a couple of these in there, maybe 3, maybe all 6, I don't know, do it your way. But have a few of them in there so that they're all loose. Then you can get your tape measure out and you can check and adjust exactly where your vent's going to end up. When you're exactly happy with its position, take your tape, tape the vent down in position. Duplicate its position on the other side, make sure that they're symmetrical. There's no difference between the two by checking off your layout points or checking off the corners of the hood with a tape measure. Once you're satisfied and they're taped down, you can just reach around the back of the hood, come in there with your rivet gun, squeeze the rivet, and you can see that thing is nice and tight. And like I said, these are aircraft grade, approved by whatever association says you need to use pop rivets on an airplane. These are the ones you want to use. Those vents are going to be down. They're not going to go anywhere. And you know, the head of the rivet's black. Everything else in this whole install is either black or body color. So black rivet's not too bad either. You do that, you're going to give yourself a little bit of room to fix your problems before they're permanent. So just one more chance to double check and reposition. Make sure everything's right, then pop your rivets and have your hoods on, or have your vents on the hood straight and symmetrical. Okay guys, now just to let you see just how accurate you can actually get using the center layout. Corner of the hood to that layout hole, you can see it dead nuts 38 3/4 to the center of the hole from the corner of the hood. Come over to the other side. Dead on 38 3/4 to the center of the hole from the corner of the hood on both sides. An additional check from that corner of the hood. Get on there, you bitch. Between 46 3/16 and 46 1/4 to the center of the hole. Stupid. Between 46 3/16 and 46 1/4 at the center of the hole. You're not getting that kind of accuracy measured to the edges. If you want to do a ton of trial and error and put this thing on and peel it back off a half a dozen times, you might get there. This was the first stick. I didn't put it on and pull it back off. Also couldn't video it because I had one set of hands, and you really need 2 sets of hands to do this the easy way. But by myself, using this layout method, that's how well this thing is on here. This is better. There's the finished hood. Most of the handprints and crap are wiped off of it. Looks okay. Yeah, there's still a few dings and scratches in it. I did hit a deer with this. Small deer, low speed, that wrinkled up the front of the hood, and that had to be straightened out, but not that big of a deal. That's why I picked this hood, because it was a spare, and if I screwed it up, really wasn't out that much. Alright, because I know somebody's going to know what tools I used, here we are. Okay. For starters, for layout, good tape measure. This is a Fat Max. You don't necessarily have to have one this good, but buy a decent tape measure. Those little Harbor Freight bastards are sometimes not accurate, and the blade is always thin and always narrow. It'll fall over and flip and reverse itself on you. You just don't want that. This thing, you can stretch it out. Well, that's past 8 feet, and it's going straight the whole time. You want a good tape measure. The little ones will give you headaches. Yardstick. This you can get away with cheap. It's very hard to screw this up. I bought this one at Walmart, $3. This 8x12 framing square. It's a maze. I stuck some tape on it in some kind of lame effort to not scratch the hood. That was actually pretty lazy on my part, but did the job just fine. This is very helpful for marking lines, for double checking your work. Good thing to have. I wouldn't have done the job without that. Tape. This is Sure Tape Orange Core. 3M also makes an orange core. It's a low tack adhesive masking tape. This stuff's great for doing temporary marking and things like that. It's perfect for this kind of stuff. When you put it down, it more or less stays down, and then when it's time to pull it off, you pull it off. It doesn't leave residue. It doesn't take off any finish or any paint. It's pretty good stuff. The only downside of this is I was working out here and it was extremely humid, and when I left my tape marks overnight, I came back out and there was little corners peeling up and little spots on the edges coming up. It didn't actually move, so it didn't give it any negative effect, but I did have to run my hand over and stick it back down. So that's at least something to think about. Okay, so that's layout tools. Oh, if you're old as fuck like me and you have to clean the rust off your toenails, a pair of old man cheaters, especially these pretty blue framed ones, these are a good thing to have. They'll help you see the little marks and help you get your rulers and your straight edges on your marks exactly like you want them to, so you can lay things out good. Cutting tools. I did have this pair of scissors for cutting the template and things like that. I did end up using them a couple of times. Probably could have got away without them and just used the knife. But, you know, it is what it is. It's part of what I use, so I'm showing it to you. For cutting the hood itself, I used a jigsaw, and in that jigsaw, I used a good metal cutting blade. This is a Bosch blade. I think it's a 16 TPI. Don't try this with either a wood blade or those cheesy ones you get at Harbor Freight. They suck. They don't make clean cuts. They tear, they jerk, they buck, they give you a headache. Just don't try and save your money there. It's not a wise thing to do. Get good blades, use them in a decent jigsaw. I could have made the cuts with the angle grinder. I'm sure that would have worked. But the reason I went with the jigsaw is because it makes a much finer cut, and you can put the edge of the blade exactly where you want it. You can see it nice and clearly, and there's no struggle to control it. It's a good thing to do. I use that to cut all the way through the skin of the hood and all the way down past and through the reinforcement panel on the back to make the full cutouts for that. And then I switched to the angle grinder to cut that extra relief around there to fit the vents up against the back of the hood skin. Couldn't have done that with the jigsaw. It cuts too deep. I would have been beating up the back of the skin. Then, of course, drill and drill bit for drilling the rivet holes. I also used a step drill for drilling through the hood panel itself to get the blade of the jigsaw in to start my cuts. And I also used this to drill out in the back of the reinforcement panel so I could drop the washers down onto the back of the rivets, because I did use different rivets and washers for this setup. Now, the rivets. These are what I used. These are an aircraft grade something or other. I called my aircraft mechanic buddy. He did give me these. However, he could not tell me anything about what manufacturer they are, what part number they are. He said these are for, you know, what do you call it? Oh, low importance, low load requirement uses, things like holding in instrument panels and things like that. These are what they would use for that kind of thing. He did give me a bag of them. I don't know what the part number is. He said you could probably find something like this at McMaster Car. It may or may not say aircraft grade on it. But that was what I used in conjunction with some small washers so I could half crimp them and still have room to adjust the vents before I put them on. A good rivet gun. Now, this is kind of expensive. You don't necessarily have to have this. I think these things are about 60 bucks. They're made by Marson, called the Click Fast. This is about the best thing that you can get as far as just a simple right angle rivet gun. They do make them that have a head that you can turn around just straight. But you don't necessarily have to have something this good, but don't buy the Harbor Freight one. They don't grip the pins and the rivets very well. They'll strip metal off the sides of them. They'll break them prematurely. They just don't work that well. So a decent rivet gun, you don't necessarily have to go this much on it. Now, combination square, I just pop the ruler out of it, and I use this for setting the angles on the louvers. So when you go to set the gurney flap at the front, here's your 90. Just set it up, push, check on either side. Do your adjustments until that sits flush. Flip it over, and then there's your 45 for the rest of them. So just bend them and use this edge right here to match. the Harbor Freight version of this would work just fine for this without a problem. So that was a very valuable tool, made that part of the job very easily. These little clamps. When I actually had everything half squeezed and the louvers were just kind of hanging there in the hood, I used these to position the vents and then double check all my measurements and make little adjustments so that they were held firmly. And then when I was happy with where everything was at, then I just went around with the rivet gun and popped all the rivets, and everything came out really good. After making your cuts, well, actually, while you're making your cuts, use iPro. These things are extremely important. While I was making the cuts, there was pieces of metal making its way into my beard. A couple pieces landed in my mouth somehow. I found a little chunk in my ear. I am certain some pieces of metal bounced off the lenses of these that would have ended up in my eyes. Use iPro. Also, use EarPro. It's loud as hell cutting through a giant flat piece of sheet metal. It's ridiculous. Also, when I was done making my cuts, this is like an 80 grit sanding sponge. When you're making cuts with an abrasive disc, this is not going to be enough to knock the burrs off the edges. But when you're making cuts with a jigsaw and a fine TPI blade, you can just run this over the edges 2 or 3 times and it'll take all the sharp edges off and burrs, so you can actually handle the edges without worrying about cutting your hands. So that was also a good thing to have. Last, drill with a decent quality drill bit of the right size for drilling my holes for my rivets. So this is the list of tools that I used. Now, could I have gotten away with less? Absolutely. Could have got away without this? No problem. Would have just taken longer. Not that big a deal. Didn't really need these scissors. I did use them a couple of times. Didn't have to have them. Sanding sponge. Could have used a scrap of sandpaper. Rivet gun. Not dispensable. Had to have it. Clamps. Could have got away without them. Step drill, could have got away without it. Extra special rivets, didn't have to have those. The ones that come in the kit are okay, there's nothing wrong with them. Could have done it without the jigsaw. Would not want to have, but I could have done it without that. So, and old man goggles, well, if you're 22, you ain't gonna need these anyway. So, this is really the tools that were required to do the job. So, these Hitachi grinders are dirt cheap. I think you can get them for 75, 80 bucks. Cheap EarPro, cheap iPro, so long as they don't fall apart and they actually cover your eyes, you're good there. Wouldn't have done away with the Sharpie. I definitely would have bought these. But yeah, so if you got the cheap version of everything here, you got $115, $125 worth of tools to do the job. And every one of these tools is useful for something else after the fact. Well, shit, the angle grinder. Some of you clowns will figure out a way to involve an angle grinder in an oil change now. So there's that. So if you want to know what tools I used, that's the pile. You can get it done. You can get it done really well without much. So there you go.